Welcome everyone to another brand new episode of the Arcana Network podcast. It's essentially a series where we talk about all things user experience in the Web3 space, but with a very strict bias towards chain abstraction and the effects that it's going to have on the industry in general. And to help us talk about a few very interesting topics today, we have two gentlemen here who from like who've been contributing to this space in different ways. We have Costas here, who's head of BD at Cycle Network. Hello, Costas. Quick hi from you.
Hello, Mayur. Hello to your audience as well. Thank you very much for having us. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. And we have Kevin Wong. Kevin is, of course, the co-founder of Kalani Network, and we'll learn about Kalani a lot more during this conversation. Hello, Kevin. Good to see you.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin, co-founder of Kalani. Good to be here.
Fantastic. So before we dive into a bunch of different topics that I'm extremely excited about talking to you guys today, because I think you guys represent two slightly different areas, of course, different parts of the stack also, so-called chain abstraction stack, but also completely different approaches to how you see the chain abstraction thesis sort of playing out in a sense. Before we dive into all of that, it would be great if you guys can quickly introduce your respective companies and what is it that you guys do at your companies. Costas, let's start with you.
Thank you very much, Mayur. So, in a nutshell, what Cycle Network is and what we do is that we offer purchase liquidity abstraction through verifiable state aggregation, and we support both BTC as well as EVM networks. In the future, that could expand to the Ton network and the Solana blockchain as well. And essentially, the capabilities of the project enable users to interact and transact across different chains and dApps in a trustless, secure, and omni-chain environment without the need for bridges. That is essentially, in a nutshell, what Cycle Network is all about.
Got that. Great. Kevin, you want to go next, please?
Yeah. So Kalani we call Kalani a solver platform. And so we want Kalani to be the way where developers come and build solvers and solver networks. And so the idea is instead of building, like solvers from scratch and running in your own, servers, Kalani provide a platform where you can write code and deploy to Kalani as code module. We call solving modules, and then you can run Kalani node as your solver. And by doing that, everybody built on top of Kalani, the solving modules can compose with each other, so you can collaborate with other solvers through Kalani as well. So that's what Kalani network is.
Fantastic. We'll learn more about both of you guys very shortly. But yeah, let's kick things off. It'd be great to kind of understand the different solutions that you guys provide. But before that, just to preface this for our audience, for those of you who not exactly been following along on the chain abstraction hype, and it's very real, is that chain abstraction is essentially this concept that allows users to basically aggregate their balances that they happen to have across different chains. These are asset balances of different sorts of tokens, ERC20s, native coins, all of those sorts of things. Aggregate them across these different chains and allow you to spend them as one. And in the chain abstraction space itself, we're seeing various sorts of approaches to how this kind of gets solved. We have solver-based, intent-based approaches. We have solver-less. We have, guys like Cycle who are building like this omni-chain sort of setting where developers come build on their chain and do this all bridgelessly in a sense. So there's lots of pros and cons, lots of nuance over here. But it'd be very useful for our audience if you guys can describe where exactly you guys sit in this so-called stack, because there's obviously many things that needs to happen. A is this aggregation of liquidity, then B is permissioning that liquidity of the users that they have across all these chains to be spent, and then how do they eventually end up with the liquidity on the destination chain where they want to spend it, and all of those sorts of things. So you can easily imagine how behind the scenes it can start to get quite complex, and there are many sort of interoperable, composable pieces in a so-called chain abstraction stack. So, Kevin, why don't you go first and sort of explain to the audience, like, why are solver networks sort of important? Where it is that you sit in the stack? Who do you sort of cater to?
Yeah. So let's start with some, fundamentals, right? Set the stage. If we talk about like cross-chain as the context, what we'll talk about here, you basically try to help user express desired or outcome that will span multiple trust zones, right? So every blockchain itself is, a distributed state machine, and then you have certain trust assumptions. But when you cross blockchains, you essentially cross its trust zones. So fundamentally, you have to rely on off-chain agents, or what we call solvers, to help you bridge the gap when you go across the trust zones, right? And from we take a very solver-centric point of view, and then all we do is to say, well, somebody else have to help you move these assets from chain A to chain B. Then how can we build, for example, DeFi primitives and, like you said, liquidity to help make this process as efficient as possible, right? Um, so, for user that want to produce certain outcome on the destination chain, then the solver needs to have the inventory, the liquidity, the capital to be able to help produce that outcome first, and then come back to the user, prove to the user that certain things have achieved, and then claim the user deposits, right? And then this is where Kalani comes in, right? So we want to be the platform where solvers can work with each other to, if one solver cannot, on their own produce the outcome, they can rely on, either capital or expertise or reach of other solvers to help them produce that outcome, and then come back and solve for the user, right? So that's our point of view.
That's super interesting, and I think I'll definitely dig deeper on what you just said there about solvers collaborating to effectively result in an outcome. Costas, I know that unlike, say, Kalani is this very specialized sort of solution aimed at a very specific like layer in that stack. They're obviously attacking this liquidity available, basically making that available, and for fulfilling intents of the user. You guys, I think, from whatever I've been reading, do a lot more in terms of like this end-to-end sort of experience for the user, for the developer. Can you, for our audience, sort of take us through like a user journey where an app has integrated Cycle Network? What is exactly happening for the user, and what is happening behind the scenes? If you could just sort of explain that flow, please.
Yeah. Before explaining the fundamentals and how it works and giving a high-level overview of how the technology behind the scenes works and how the user actually gets to experience this whole interaction, I would like to start by first saying why Cycle Network was established to begin with. So we've seen this, probably something that has been discussed on your podcast at quite length, but I think it's important to spend a bit of time going through it here as well. So we've seen a couple of years ago, the team building the product has realized that it's extremely difficult for Web2 users to engage with the Web3 space. And that's because of the number of chains that are available, how complex they are to navigate in terms of having seed phrases, wallets, different chains, different layer twos, all these different accounts. So for the average Web2 user that has never engaged with Web3, this is an extremely daunting kind of experience. And that is the reason why most of those Web2 users entering Web3 for the first time ended up using centralized exchanges like Binance, for instance, which have achieved chain abstraction. But these centralized exchanges have achieved it in a centralized kind of way. So Cycle Network wants to achieve the same level of chain abstraction in a more decentralized kind of way. And the second challenge that appeared to us very imminent and that should be solved as soon as possible in order to make Web3 better for everyone is the fact that liquidity is fragmented. And having this fragmented liquidity, this allows both users and projects from making the most of what Web3 has to offer. And now, let's say we have a user that wants to engage with different dApps or different chains, then that entails them holding different tokens and having to pay a lot of different gas fees. And the amount of gas fees that they would have to pay would not be insignificant either. And the same goes for developers. If they want to tap into different ecosystems, then they need to deploy their their apps or their product onto different ecosystems. But with Cycle's technology, we want to simplify all these and allow, on the one hand, users to interact directly with the dApp or chain of their choice without having to pay all those gas fees or without even the need to have all those tokens to begin with. And for developers, through integrating our SDK, allow them to automatically tap into a wider pool of Web3 users. And the approach that we take from a technological point of view is that there are three layers for Cycle. At the bottom, we have the security layer. And the security layer of Cycle Network is Ethereum, which in turn allows us to inherit both its stability and its safety. Then we also have the Cycle Network, which is a roll-up essentially connecting Cycle to different layers and blockchains. And we also have the extended layer, which includes all the chains that Cycle is connected to. At the same time, we have two different interfaces. The roll-in interface, which refers to all deposit transactions and messages coming from other chains to Cycle, and the rollout interface that includes all withdrawal transactions and messages from Cycle to other chains. And to achieve this, Cycle uses a native layer 1 to layer 2 bridge to expand to these other chains. And we also have two modules for our state protection, one of which is the omni-state channel indexer, and the other one is the verifiable state aggregator. In terms of how the user actually gets to experience these, we have now developed a product we call Piggy Bank, and we've run a few different campaigns with notable projects like Berachain, IoTex, BVM as well. And through this product, users can just connect their MetaMask wallet to our Piggy Bank website, and then they can mint NFTs directly on the target chain without the need to breach any tokens and without the need to even have those tokens of the target chain to begin with. So it's very seamless, it's very easy, it's very quick, and very cheap as well. And this is, again, in a nutshell, how the whole process works.
Got it. So essentially, Cycle is like this ZK rollup, as I understand it, and what it does is it gives ways to be able to verify the state of different sorts of rollups that connect to you guys in this extension layer, as you call it. And then, as a consequence of that, you are able to kind of allow through this bridge that you also spoke about, allow these users to basically move assets from wherever to chain their destination chain. But as I understand it, you've also spoken about rolling in assets and rolling out assets. Does that mean that users need to actually deposit assets to Cycle Network? Is that how it works?
Users do not need to deposit any assets to Cycle Network. They can just connect their MetaMask wallet
Mhm.
to our website, and that takes place automatically in the background, the movement of assets.
Okay, so the assets actually move from my wallet to Cycle, and then from there they can move anywhere. Is that sort of accurate?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, perfect, great. No, thanks for that overview, Costa. That's really helpful. Um, I want to move on to a topic that we are very interested in at Arcana ourselves. We have our own points of view, but maybe Kevin, you can kick things off here. Um, solver based versus solverless. I know where you guys obviously stand on this, and you said so yourself very clearly. But can you just help describe these two different approaches and why you feel like the solver based approach is indeed better in terms of user experience, capital efficiency, whatever, security, different sorts of
What's the other one?
so that there are these solver-less approaches where basically you have these
Yeah.
orchestration layers that try and leverage existing bridges to be able to kind of almost tunnel user assets from here to there instead of like a deposit and a fronting of liquidity that a solver-based intent-based network would eventually do.
Yeah, but what's the other one? Like, what's the one in comparison that you want me to contrast with?
Oh, this so obviously one is the solver-based stuff where users are depositing and getting liquidity fronted on the destination
Yeah.
chain. The other one
Yes.
is the solver-less, which is people using like an orchestration layer where they're using existing bridges to essentially move assets from chain A to chain B or from chain A, B, C to chain D. These are vastly different sort of like designs, but achieve similar goals by hiding away complexity and abstracting away chains to a very large degree. So, what is your take on why one is better than the other?
Yeah. Okay. Um, so the solver-based approach allow you to. Okay. So let me sort of again go back a little bit, sort of set the stage, right? The orchestration-based approach and the solver-based approach are very similar in that it allows some type of a programmability into sort of producing the outcome. The difference is in this orchestration focused approach, the programmability happens on chain in some sort of orchestration layer. You can deploy contracts. You can, I'm not expert there, but I assume everybody can deploy some logic on chain and then to as part of the solving process. Where the solver centric approach, the programming happens on the solver, right? It's off chain instead of on chain. Um, but then otherwise they're very similar, right? The orchestration based approach also require off chain agents, and then they are known as relayers that the user's desire still have to be represented as some sort of payload to go from the source to maybe the orchestration train. And then over there, it gets, programmed and optimized and, liquidity source or whatever. And then and then the result, the outcome, probably again, use another set of relayers to go to destination chain, right? Where it's the solver centric approach. So in a way, the outcome production mostly happen on chain, right? Uh, but the transmission of the produced outcome happens off chain as Relayer. Relayer are pretty dumb, right? Relayer just say, give me a payload, I'll hit another chain on some, inbox or entry point. Whereas the solver-centric approach just says, I will also generate the payload, but instead of generating on the orchestration place, I will generate off-chain locally, right? And then multiple solvers can compete, and then to say who can generate the best payload to give to the user, right? So on that front, they're very similar, just in terms of where the solution generation happens. Do you want that solution generation happens to on-chain or off-chain? That's it, right? Now, the second part of, now we start to contrast them, right? To see, well, why is the solver-centric approach or off-chain-centric approach better? Because when you generate solutions that can satisfy what user wants on the destination chain, like from my point of view, the more state you have, the more optimal the solution you can generate, right? If you have an orchestration-centric approach, the only state that you can utilize to optimize for the outcome is the state available on the orchestration solution platform, orchestration chain. You cannot use other state to optimize, right? Whereas if you do a solver-centric approach, because solver sits off-chain, solvers can index state of 50 chains if they wish to, or even something like exchange as an example. They have just a lot more state they can use to generate the solution, right? They can of course also index a orchestration chain's state as well, and to generate a solution based on that, right? So when you go off chain, you get strictly broader set of state you can use to generate the solution, right? And fundamentally, I mean, otherwise, the moving things around, the moving payload around, the transmission part of this process is identical from these two solutions, right? It just the generation part is different. And then fundamentally, the more state you have, the better you can generate a solution to make user happier.
So is this so-called like availability of information of state, like you say, is that something that Kalani provides to solvers, or is this something that solvers can specialize on their own to be able to do and get a competitive edge on other solvers? How does that work?
Yeah. So for Kalani, it's the same, right? Kalani is the platform. It's a collaboration platform. So, if you just focus on state, I mean, first of all, it's not just state. Even you have a bunch of state, you still have to think about how to optimize them, right? This is like the routing stuff, like in like DEX aggregators. Even you have the entire on-chain state, you have to figure out how to route through them to find the best route, right? So, but state, having the available state, the first step that you can optimize is something to work with. Now, if we just focus on like having more state, then Kalani allows anybody to basically perform like indexers, right? So like Kalani has a pretty broad definition or conception of what solvers are. So the solvers or the off-chain agents or off-chain actors that focus on indexing states, they're essentially, indexing solvers. We can call everything solvers. They can permissionless bring their indexing capabilities to Kalani and then offer other solvers of indexing as a service. So other solvers say, well, I don't want to focus on indexing 50 chains, but if you do it, I will work on the index you built, the data that you provide. Obviously, I'll pay a fee, but it's probably more efficient than me having to index everything myself. Uh, and I can work with a superset of all indexing solvers, their state, the state, the index they can bring to me as something that I can work with as a foundation. So we provide a platform for solver to collaborate. And in this case, the indexing solver can work with routing solvers or orchestration solvers. Maybe that's another way to put it, right? And collectively, they can produce the outcome for the users.
That's very interesting. No, thanks so much, Kevin. I have a couple more questions. I'll come back to you. But Costas, essentially on Cycle, you want to be like this holistic solution that you provide to developers, which in turn affects the lives of users of those applications. My question to you is, like what is the primary challenge in this becoming ubiquitous in order for users everywhere to be able to kind of leverage this experience? Because obviously this means that an app developer needs to say, yes, Cycles SDK is great and we want to kind of adopt it. But if that solution, that if another app does not for whatever reason, and they use something else, then the user experience now starts to break between, or is rather not break, but is could be vastly different. And how, what do you see as like the challenge in potentially making this far more ubiquitous so that the end state for the user remains the same? Because obviously standards are non-existent, and getting to a place where we have standards that everyone can abide by is also going to be very difficult. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, actually, that is a very good question. And right now we're trying to showcase the capabilities that Cycle Network has. We've been fortunate enough to have been included in Binance Cohort 7 um, that was announced a few weeks ago, that has allowed us to continue having these conversations with new projects that now are more aware of Cycle Network, its capabilities, and the way that we could potentially provide value to one another. And I know that this is we're at the very beginning of this chain abstraction segment, so to speak, of the Web3 industry. But at the end of the day, it's all about having these conversations, making people aware. We're collaborating with many projects on a testnet kind of level to showcase the ways that we can interact and collaborate with one another. And should the technology or the solution that Cycle Networks be something that our counterparties are looking to integrate, then we're more than happy to proceed to more of a mainnet kind of collaboration as well. So we're also trying to have these conversations. We definitely don't have a blueprint of how to expand to the whole of the Web3 space. But yeah, some of the collaborations that we have been able to establish have been quite significant in terms of expanding our group of collaborators and associates. And yeah, it's all about keeping in touch with people, communicating clearly how you can help them, and trying to provide value to one another.
All right, no, thanks for that, Kostas. Yeah, Kevin, back to you. I have a very pressing personal question that I wanted to ask you. Is okay. Before that, quick preface question: are your customers applications themselves, or is it the protocols that are building chain abstraction? Uh, who is it, or is it both?
Neither.
Neither.
Our customers are solvers. So
Ah, okay.
we're a solver platform, right? So we help solvers become better solvers.
Ah, okay.
Obviously, the solvers help applications to become better.
Hmm.
Um, but the solvers basically, the application specific solvers will connect to Kalani to become more generalized or more super solvers. And they can solve for more things for applications or intent applications and users and things like that. So we strictly operate on the solver realm. Um, so you can think of, like, one way to think about Kalani is to think about us as a like a solver aggregator, right? So
Hmm.
any solver can join us, and and then they can tap into the solving capacity of other solvers. So collectively,
Got
we
it.
become, like a super solver. I mean, if that makes sense.
But who consumes this service that these solvers kind of offer? Who is that side of that market?
Solvers. Anybody that needs solvers, they just need to build their local solvers, because every different applications, either you talk about bridges, either talk about filler swaps, you talk about like more advanced semantics like cross-chain, you know, multi-asset swaps and so on, or cross-chain optimization like like perps, but you want to do a chain abstracted perps, for example, right? They all have to build their own off-chain description and build their off-chain system that will uh, cater to the application specific requirements, right?
Yeah.
But then whatever solving that they build tend to be is may not be enough because there may not be enough liveness. There may not be enough liquidity. They may not natively support 20 chains. They have to underwrite the risk of different blockchains, confirmation rules, and asset issuance, and so on and so forth. Right. So all that we're gonna abstract them away. Right. So they only have to build the connection between their solver to Kalani, and then they're gonna have this superpower solver network that will
Hmm.
serve the application's needs, right? So we're really not sort of functioning in the directly connecting to applications point of view, or uh, most of our flow, for example, will be coming from solvers. So we just
Hmm.
make solvers better anywhere, everywhere, and then they will connect to applications that will need solvers. Yeah.
Got it. So based on that, if I can you sort of elucidate the challenges of building this super solver layer? Just just from the context for this question is, why shouldn't someone essentially try and build out their own solver network? Primarily because it would seem like a lot of value accrual happens there, because the capital efficiency will come from an optimally solved say intent, uh, and it would appear that an app like even a chain abstracted perpdex, which has large enough tvl, would want to further optimize on value accrual for themselves and perhaps look to kind of build. But what is your sort of like words of caution when, or direct to these people in terms of like the challenges they would end up facing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just not efficient, not scalable, right? It's as if you ask every pizza shop to bootstrap their own global distribution network, every farm to bootstrap their global, ordering system and logistic network for every single farm so that they can reach every customers. In reality, that's not how people do it, right? So, like in Web 2, you have these global, highly coordinated distribution networks like, UPS and FedEx, and there are Amazon even logistics networks that they will optimize globally. And then all you have to do for a local player is to say, I'm gonna plug into that system. Now maybe the neighborhood kids will ride their bike to ship my stuff to UPS local distribution center, and from there it just takes over. I don't have to build. I don't know how to build it all the way to Seattle and operate that constantly, right? Uh, so that's the idea. I mean, it's to ask every single application to bootstrap their entire off-chain infrastructure to connect to all the solvers and all the applications and all the chains to meet users everywhere. It's hugely inefficient, right? It's just practically impossible. Now, in terms of the value accrual, again, going back to the distributed network example, all these networks, I mean, it's going to be competition on the global level to provide the best, universal coordinated sort of, best coordination. If you don't like UPS, you can go to FedEx. If you like FedEx, you can go to a different vendor, right? Um, so I mean, they have a margin that they will charge, but probably much cheaper than what you could build yourself. You could still, I mean, they are not going to eat your margin, right? So if you specialize in producing the best cheese, for example, and then sure, the solving logistic network it's going to be part of your cost basis, but they're not going to come and eat your profit margin, right? And you're not going to build your own global network to improve your margin. It will do the opposite, right? Um, so, like from Kalani's point of view, forget about the analogy. Every application can still monetize and on their order flow and do value accrual and everything because they control the entry point and the last look of the global solver, right? So they can express sort of value redistribution or MEV redistribution as much as they want, but they can go through Kalani as the global solver collaboration platform to source the best solution, right? On top of that, they can then decide how to redistribute the value that's generated through the solving process. So they're not losing anything. Yeah.
Understood. No, thanks for that, Kevin. Costas, like the list of potential use cases for chain abstraction and chain abstraction based solution is obviously almost limitless. One could easily argue, but what are you guys seeing as very real use cases in for whenever you reach out to apps or apps are reaching out to you, where this obviously will find good product market fit? What is it, like DeFi? Is it gaming? Is it, what areas are you guys seeing on cycle side?
Yeah, for us, we've seen that maybe at the beginning stages, at least of the technology, projects that might be in need for such solutions might be newer projects that want to tap into the ecosystems of other projects that Cycle is connected to, that want to attract their user base. And once we integrate with a chain, whether that's a layer one or layer two, newer projects can tap into that kind of pool. So that means that developers, on the one hand, would not have to deploy on all these different ecosystems. And on the other hand, users would be able to interact through the original project with all these other ecosystems that Cycle Network has already connected to. And that goes back to what I described before, the campaigns that we have now been running with various projects through which you can preciously mint an NFT on the target chain with just having the assets from the original chain that your MetaMask wallet was connected to. And connecting your MetaMask wallet to Cycle Network's piggy bank solution allows you to directly mint that NFT. So for us, this is what we see as the best product market fit at this point in time. And yeah, it has both user as well as developer centric applications and allows both of these different parties to benefit through a Cycle Network integration.
Got that. Can you also just continue along and tell us a bit more about your roadmap and what can people expect, say perhaps over the next 6 months from you guys?
Yeah, now our mainnet has is pretty much ready. We're going to be closing our funding round in the next couple of weeks, and when that is done, then we're going to be announcing publicly our mainnet and allow both users as well as developers to start using our mainnet and not just collaborate on a testnet kind of level.
Got that. Yeah. Kevin, similar question for you. I was just seeing that you guys have early access through an invite, I'm guessing, on your website. So what's like the roadmap for you guys? When can people start building?
Yeah, I don't think we have early access yet. We're definitely cooking something inside. We're we hope to get something out with sort of like a early system with crutches, right? That's sort of everybody is launching with nowadays. Um, like the early version we launched, it's likely going to be invitation only. But I think because we work mostly with solvers today, and we know most of the folks sort of in that space, so I don't think there is a good way because it's not going to be a general system when we first launch. Um, so we're launched with more like invitation only. We're going to work with select partners. Uh, but so if for a team that are in the solving space, um, you know, uh, please reach out to us, and then we're happy to work with you. But yeah, but again, we hope to launch something soon. I can't give promise when. It's how software works. But yeah, but that's for us.
Got that. I was actually referring to it's in the first fold of your website, and there is a Google Doc right there saying early interest or early access. Uh, I was referring to that, but yeah. Okay, cool, very cool. No, it's been super interesting talking to both of you guys. You guys obviously very different areas and approaches and things like that. Any sort of last words you want to give out to the audience in terms of we've obviously spoken about the roadmap, but anything else that you'd like to share? Any information that you'd like to especially give out? Kevin, you want to go first?
No, I think for folks, interested in, following what we do, we're pretty active on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter, just sort of talk our point of view. When we have something available, we'll definitely announce on Kalani's Twitter handle. It's Kalani spells KHALANI _ So that's Kalani at Kalani Network. Or follow me on Twitter, KNWANG, KN Yeah.
Perfect, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Costas.
Yeah, for us, I would say that if someone is interested in what we're building and wants to learn more about it, we have part of our team at this point in time in Korea for the Korean Blockchain Week, and we'll also be attending Token 2049 in Singapore in a few weeks' time. So we'll be more than happy to meet you there offline as well, and see how we can work with one another and provide value to each other's projects.
Perfect, great. No, it was absolute fun talking to you guys. I think we could have spent a lot more time discussing more topics, deep diving a bit more. But given that we are still a slightly early stages of chain abstraction, I think it's better to go step by step. Thank you guys for your time today, and sharing all of your lovely insights. And hope to be able to kind of do part two at some point very soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you. Thank
All
you
right, take care.
to
See
the
you.
audience as well for joining. Thank you very much.